Welcome, this is Jim, host of the Faith Influencer podcast, where we're going to dive into discussions on faith's role in everyday life, from navigating blended families to overcoming challenges. I'm a husband, a father, a Bible teacher, an advocate for applying faith to everyday life. So tune in as I share personal stories, valuable insights, and practical wisdom. This is Jim Cunningham. Welcome back to Faith Influencer. So excited, as always, about our podcast, but I'm extra excited today because we're going to do something a little different today. So since we've been doing this podcast, we get lots of feedback, mostly positive, some negative. That's fine. We want the truth from our audience. We're going to deal with some of the negative feedback that we've received over some recent discussions that we've had. And to do this, I brought in a good friend of mine as our guest today. So Faith Influencer has a special guest, Nathan. And Nathan, welcome. I'm so excited to have you today. This is going to be so much fun. And I want to tell you a little bit about Nathan and why I've asked him to join me in this podcast. One, because of the subject that we're covering, the feedback that we're going to deal with, it helps that we have different perspective. And so Nathan is in his 20s, and let's just say I'm over 20. You say, well, how old are you? And I'm going to say, well, it's none of your business. So that's what I tell everybody. But it's going to give us a different perspective. Nathan is an entrepreneur. He's a local business owner. He's military. Thank you for your service. And also, he is a brother in the Lord. And so we're going to lightly tread on these subjects, and maybe I shouldn't say lightly because I'm not sure we're going to tread lightly. We're going to be honest.
No.
Yeah?
Yes.
But let me tell you what we're going to address. So we've received lots of feedback over some recent podcasts about attractiveness, about what we've said about gaining weight in particular, about females and wives. And so we're going to just kind of jump on those subjects, address some of the feedback that you've given us, but at the same time, we want to be redemptive and kind and honest all together. And so, Nathan, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Jim. Let's get into it.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Have you been, so you've listened to some of this, so you know some of the feedback that we've gotten?
Yes.
Some of the negative feedback that we've received.
Yes.
Not always nice. I mean, some of the feedback was a little harsh, maybe. I was even told by someone that I should lose 70 pounds.
Man.
I know, right?
I can't imagine seeing you I don't know where you... Yeah, well, I guess I should too.
So that was the feedback. I think maybe they were just trying to be
helpful.
Trying to be no, they were trying to get back at me because I was covering this subject.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's an age thing. I think it's a perspective thing. And let me throw in this one other caveat before we jump in deep into this, is that remember what we're doing here. This is a blended family podcast. And do you remember that when it comes to divorce, that blended family divorce rate goes way up versus first marriages? So my goal is to strengthen the blended family. And the foundation of the blended family is the marriage. That's why we're covering this marriage issue and dealing with some things that perhaps were issues in someone's first marriage and they didn't deal with or don't know how to deal with or afraid to talk about it. So that's why we're covering this, because we're trying to strengthen our marriages. So Nathan's married. By the way, congratulations. He is a new father. I say new father, 4 months?
4 months.
Yeah.
You know, I'm new to fatherhood.
Yes, new to fatherhood.
Yes.
So we do have that total opposite perspective. So let me jump in and here we go. So this is where I began. I began talking about attractiveness.
Right.
One of the things that we get from men and that I've received in years of counseling is, one, after you've been married for a while, attractiveness is not necessarily quite the same. That's normal. You know how when you first are in a relationship and you're just everything is perfect. But attractiveness can begin to go away a little bit. But sometimes it's because we let ourselves go away a little bit. And so let's start by jumping in the idea of attractiveness.
So with that, I'd like to kind of back up a little bit. When you were mentioning the comments, and I was seeing the comment section, people when they see a spicy video or something like that, they run into those comment sections. So I ran to the comment sections, and what I found was the ad hominem attacks about you should lose 70 pounds, right? That's you have what you need right there to say, man, I struck a chord with the truth, and instead of responding, it was a reaction of you need to lose 70 pounds.
Yeah.
So
yeah, maybe vindictive, just
a little vindictive,
because
and we're here in love. We're not here to attack you.
Yeah.
But you should lose 70 pounds though.
Yeah. Right. Wrong. So I don't have 70 pounds to lose. I would look like, who was the guy you mentioned earlier?
David Hasselhoff.
David Hasselhoff legs. So it's more like this light pole I'm looking at over here. It's pretty narrow. That's what I would look like at the 70 pounds.
Well, I looked like a David Hasselhoff leg, before I met my wife.
Oh, you did?
I did.
Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So we were talking about attractiveness, right? And I didn't realize that my wife was she was a little overweight, right?
Okay.
She was pretty, but she was pretty overweight.
Okay.
But for me, I was too skinny. I looked like a drumstick. And I guess, and I know that I was, that a lot of life factors were happening, and I just, whatever. And so after we got married, we're looking back on pictures of us, and I'm looking at myself, and it was just bad. I'm like, I didn't like that.
You said all ears?
I was all ears. I was all ears, man. And then she was just a little plump little thing. And I told her, I said, man, honey, you were a little chunky monkey. And then at first she's just like, oh, wait, what? And I'm like, what are you doing that for? Like, look at you now. Like, you look great. And we were comparing pictures, and she said, I was. But here's the thing, though. It just goes to show that there was something else at work there, because I didn't see, I was attracted to her, right? But I didn't see all the extra poundage.
Right.
But I was still attracted to her, and we just did a lineup, and she's like, yeah. But look at me now.
Yeah. Right.
And it adds to that.
But that makes me think of this, and this is a good time to say it. So let me throw this in here. When we're talking about subjects like this, if we're going to be if we're going to grow in our marriages, how important is it to be honest?
Very, very important.
But how often do we just tread lightly because we're afraid to talk to our spouse about an issue? To our audience, let me say, this is a faith influencer podcast, faith-based. We believe in speaking the truth, but the Bible, when Paul addresses this, doesn't stop there. He says, speak the truth in love. But that was part of his formula for a successful marriage. So should you be able to talk about something like this in your marriage? If you think that your spouse is overweight and it's an issue, we're not talking about do you love them, okay? So let me address that, because I think some of the feedback was like, why are you basing your marital love on how someone looks? We're not talking about do we love them or not, but attractiveness.
Right. But that goes to show that if a man or a woman, but specifically in the comment sections, were women. So
yes.
If this woman, most women, they go all out, right? I'm going to find me a man. I'm going to get into the gym. I'm going to make sure everything is just where it needs to be, right? Coming from being chunky or whatever to transforming to this person, right? Okay, now it's time for me to find me a man who can see me for who I am and love me for who I am because I am.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, get a man, married, all the things. Then they're going throughout life, have a kid, just, have another kid or whatever, and these things just start to go. And then the husband's like, hey, this wasn't the deal, if you will. Like I still love you, right? Because at the end of the she has his kids. So that's a different love in and of itself, right?
Sure.
I still love you, but hey, let's do something about this. Well, you just don't love me for who I am. Just love all of me. But the marriage was based on a lie. Because this person already struggled with food or whatever. Here, goes through all these things just to get fit to get a man.
Yes.
Then gets all that validation, if you will, and then just lets herself go. All based on a lie.
Yeah. But there's proof that if someone wants to deal with weight issues,
right,
they can. When they're motivated enough to do it, they will.
Right.
How much do you think that let's keep going in this direction, how much should a wife be considerate that her husband is more visual than she is? And it's not an issue of love, but attractiveness.
It's not an issue of love. You're right. And it's proven that a man he's got to be attracted to you. The woman has certain expectations, right? A man has certain expectations. Have you seen the show, the Pop the Balloon show?
I have not.
Okay. This is gonna get you. So there's a lineup of men, right? And or there's a lineup of women.
Okay.
And there's a hostess. And so they introduce these single ladies or these single men and comes out. She stands by the hostess and there's that lineup if it's a lady. And if it's a man, there's the lineup of ladies. And they all have balloons. Okay. And the hostess is like, okay, here. Take this toothpick and pop one of the balloons based off of, what you see. Here's what I saw. The lady will take her toothpick. She's, whatever, right? She's bigger than life, right? She's walking over there, pops the balloon. Okay, the hostess says, why did you pop the balloon? I didn't like the jeans he had on. I didn't like his shirt, his shoes, right? Okay. And the man she'll say to the man, well, why'd you keep your balloon for her? He says, well, I found her, whatever he says, right? Okay, reverse that. Now the man's coming out. Pop the balloon. See, pop a couple of balloons. He pops them. He's going to town. And she says, well, why'd you pop her balloon? He's like, well, just, she's not, she's cute, she's beautiful, but she's not my type. Well, she's overweight.
Right.
And so she, for him, is looking for, she's like, your pants or whatever, or you're not tall enough. That's one of the biggest things. You're not tall enough for me. Right? Or what do you do for work? Oh, well, I do this. Well, I just can't see myself with a DJ. I just can't see myself with a DJ, right?
Yeah.
But you reverse that, and these women, they want a man in finance, 7 foot tall and chiseled down to the ankles, right?
Yeah.
So they have expectations. Well, okay, well, all right, step on the scale. Because I have expectations too.
Right.
And it's not over 200 pounds. Sorry.
Literally, this last week, I won't tell you where I was, but I was being nosy because I started overhearing conversation between two ladies. But because of this podcast, I was leaning in, listening.
Right.
I'll be honest, they didn't know I was listening. So a little invasion there, but I was still listening. And while I'm listening, she's complaining to this other lady about her husband. And this was her complaint. She said, he's just not a go-getter. That's the word that she used. He's not a go-getter, and I'm not attracted to that. I want him to be aggressive, and I want him to go and increase our income, and I want him to be a go-getter, and he's not. Expectation.
Right.
Expectation. They go both ways. Maybe they take a little different direction between physical, visual versus the go-getter and making money, and maybe not. But the fact is there are expectations there.
Right.
So in previous podcast, I talked about the most important thing for a woman, according to the Bible, is she needs love. And what a man needs is respect. That's what the Bible says. He needs respect. And a man needs to know that you're not out there talking about him to your friends.
Right.
So what's the alternative? Talk to each other. But can they talk about these things?
They can, right? But they are so weighted down with society and with what doesn't exist.
What do you mean, doesn't exist?
The 7-foot man in finance chiseled down to the ankles. Unrealistic. And it's set out by Hollywood, right? And so it's like, what are you invested into? Like, what you said you love this person. Why don't you talk to this person about what you need? You know, women want to be cherished, loved. They want security. Mm-hmm. They want emotional attachment, things of that nature. Men, like you said, they're more visual creatures. And I think I remember you saying on one of your podcasts how your dad was a what'd you call him? A gazer, a looker, or something like that? He had wandering eyes.
He did have wandering eyes, yes. And I don't justify that.
But men, they have. Look at David, King David.
Right.
He, over there drinking his cup of coffee, and he said, "Lord," and he's, "Oh," you know what I'm saying? That's a man, and he clearly was attracted by what he saw. Exactly. Right.
Yes.
And, we're visual creatures, so it's what we see, and we need food, look pretty here and now and then, and then the sexual attraction. There's that physical attraction, and there's the sexual attraction. Men are pretty simple that way, right? Mm-hmm. And some men, they have it ingrained. Listen, cook me a meal, tell me I'm doing great, honey, and give me a little loving, and I will set the world on fire for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to that, right, he's just not a go-getter. Okay, Pamela, whoever this lady is, what you got going on? Mm-hmm. What you got going on? Because I'm sure he was setting the world on fire in the first quarter of the marriage, but there's something that he's not telling you, which kind of goes to the fact that some men, you say they love their wives, right? But you can't tell me that you love your wife when you won't tell them the truth.
Right. And that's really part of this issue why we're wanting to address this. If you're going to have a strong marriage and not go through the divorce that you've been through since this is our Blended Family podcast, then you've got to get to the point where you can be honest in love with each other. You may want to go to your husband and say, "Honey, there's this issue and I'm struggling a little bit with it," and speak to him in love. But can he come to you and say to you, "Baby, we've got to stop going through the drive-thru"?
Right. Yeah. But today's society, back to the society thing, right? Men coddle women.
Right.
They coddle them.
Well, in the years of marriage counseling, when I do pre-marriage counseling, this is one of the corny things I would do. And it would always embarrass the couple, especially if they were young. And this is what I'd say to them. I'd say, "Okay, on your wedding night, this is what I want you to do." And they're looking at me like, already starting to get a little embarrassed.
Right.
But on your wedding night, I want you to both get naked. Uh-huh. And I want you to go in front of the mirror, and I want you to both stand there and look at each other. And they're looking at me like, okay. And this is what I'd say. What do you notice? Don't answer. Let me answer. What do you notice? That you're different. You're different. You don't think the same. You don't look the same.
Right.
You don't respond the same. And so I think wives are looking at their husbands and say, you shouldn't have any trouble with how I look or attractiveness. But wife, that's how you think.
Right.
We're not the same.
No. We're not. Not at all.
We see things differently. So, yeah, so we can't project how we think about it to our spouse.
Right. But it just goes to that point that the lady, she wants to have her way. She wants to do this and she wants to do that. And the man, he's just like, well, hey, honey. And some women pride themselves on, I run my house. I do whatever I want, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, my husband knows not to tell me not to drive through the Chick-fil-A line, right? And he's like, hey, honey, you were at Chick-fil-A this past week for 6 weeks. And what about it? That's not, honey, you haven't cooked a meal in a little bit, right? And what she's doing is violating one of his core internal structures is being violated.
Mm-hmm.
What's a home cooked meal? That's part of the experience. But you done picked up that double quarter pounder with cheese.
So, are you just being too old-fashioned?
No. Society would say that. But it just goes back to what people will scientifically respond to because it's how we were designed.
Okay, I hope you're enjoying this. We're having lots of fun. This is the end of part 1. Tune in next time for part 2. Thanks again. This is Faith Influencer and Jim Cunningham.